the Air Force, you have to be an officer.
Okay. And so you had that down, and like, what was your training for becoming a pilot? Like, you flew B-52s, and how do they decide what you're going to fly? Do you just
do you
have
get to
like
pick, or
have
do they
choices?
Yeah.
Yeah. You do a year, officer school is about 3 or 4 months. And then you go to pilot training, which is a year. And that you go from, being pretty much a pedestrian till, you've got, your wings at the end of that. And it's drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Every day, I felt like every day I was on the verge of getting kicked out. Later, as an instructor, I went back, and instructed for 3 years, and you realize how difficult it is to actually remove somebody from. But they like to make you feel that, and so we have this thing in it. One of the deals is it's called a stand up, and so that's, you start every day with that. In the brief, they'll give you a situation of, okay, you're in the plane, you're at 14,000 feet. This is what your gauges look like, and all of a sudden you get a firelight in your right engine, and then they'll look around the room and go, Lieutenant White, you have the aircraft, and you have to pop up and you go, sir, I'll maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, take the appropriate action, land as soon as conditions permit. Wow. Still remember that part.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's impressive.
And then you have to go through it as to how you would handle the situation, and if you handle it good enough, then you get to fly that day. If you don't, you get sat down. And you do that right in front of your peers, and so, you're sitting there with the pressure of trying to come up with a situation, the solution, and somebody over there is going like, oh, he just jacked that up, and all, but, and I'm just doing this on the fly, that analytics, and it applies to anything in life. You maintain aircraft control, and you got to maintain the situation. You got to maintain, you can't lose your head,
right
away. Analyze the situation, taking in all the facts, everything you can do, and that it works too, today in my current job. If I'm faced with something, a tactical situation, maintain control of the situation, analyze the situation, take the appropriate action, and then land as soon as conditions permit. Just resolve it totally. So that's pilot training in a nutshell. It's just a pressure cooker for a year. At the end of that, they rank you, and then they have all the planes available. So it's kind of a lottery of what they need at that point in time. And so they go, all right, the first pick is this guy. He wants a A10, or he wants a whatever. And do we have that available? Yes. And so you match them up. And so I placed high enough to get my first pick, which was the B-52, not because of the aircraft, but mainly because it's in my hometown. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So I got to come back and live in my hometown, and
that's nice.
That I deployed out of combat, for combat out of my hometown. So
that's cool.
That's awesome.
What time period was this? This is late 90s, early 2000s when?
I went into officer school in 98,
okay.
And then graduated pilot training in 2000. And so I just been qualified whenever 9/11 happened. So got to go on the first wave of that. My employment just did a interview with me on that, on the commemoration of 9/11. They're like, where were you during 9/11, and what do you remember about it? And so they wanted you to write in a little bit, and they were going to pick who they interviewed. And I was like, I was sitting in a strategic nuclear $74 million bomber loaded with nuclear weapons whenever the second tower fell. And like, what?
Yeah, that's insane.
They called to get the whole story on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you expand on that story
a little bit of that?
Yeah.
I can.
Now I'm
Man,
interested.
I want to tell that story again. So I was a co-pilot in the 20th Bomb Squadron here in Shreveport. And so the instructor, the schoolhouse, who trains everybody, they were going to deploy up to Minot for an exercise, and they needed some co-pilots because they're all pilots and high ranking and everything. So I volunteered, like, hey, I'll go with them. I'm going to be doing the exercise here or there. I might as well go see some different countries. So deployed up to Minot with them for a week, and we were doing a plane with some nuclear weapons. And that's whenever 9/11 happened. We terminate with a scramble to the jets, like during the Cold War, running out to the planes. And as that happened is whenever the first tower fell. Wow. So we're sitting out in the jet for several hours, not knowing what's going on with the engines running. So they're talking about whether the nation's under attack, and so they kept us with engines running in case we had to get the weapons off the base and in the air and get them somewhere safe. Yeah. So we sat out in the jet for several hours and then came back in, and there were talks about what are we going to do. So the decision was made that we're going to leave the weapons on the plane in case we have to scramble out there and get them gone and go to the polar cap or wherever they sent me and send me gas as long as they need me to stay up there with the weapons to keep them safe. So we did that. At one point in time, they deployed a E-6B Prowler up to keep track of aircraft and make sure nobody was coming in. And one point in time, they picked up something on radar and they scrambled the Prowler out to it. And what happens in North Dakota in the winter, in the fall, September, a flock of geese headed south. So they intercepted a flock of geese, but we had scrambled to the jets and cranked engines and were ready to launch and go somewhere. So that happened. I knew my squad had just come on the hook for AEF for their rotation, and so if they were going to be the ones that were going to go solve this problem and take care of it. And so I was telling them, like, hey, I have to get back to Barksdale. If those guys leave and I'm up here, like, I'm getting left out of the show. And they were telling me, like, I don't know, we're the most experienced pilots in the Air Force. If anybody goes, we're going to go, and we'll probably just leave out of here. And they're like, well, we have another problem. If that happens, I only packed about 4 days worth of underwear. If we're going to go fight a war, I am not prepared. Anyway, we didn't know who had attacked us and what was going on. But eventually, we took everything off the planes and we flew back, and I left out September 24th on the third B-52, and that flight was 29 and a half hours, exactly halfway around the world to Diego Garcia. And over there, flew 18 combat sorties, I think it was 275 combat hours, and dropped about 250,000 pounds of ordnance over there during the first few months of 9/11.
Was that over Afghanistan or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you watch the movie 12 Strong, I thought it was awesome as Liam Hemsworth goes in there and he's interviewing for the job, and he talks to the commander, and he's like, I interviewed 6 other candidates, and they're all telling me, this can be done, and you had the least experience, and you come in here and you're pointing out all the problems with it. And he goes, what? He said, you're talking about doing close air support with a B-52 in a country that's never been conquered. He said, if anybody tells you they've done it before, they're lying, which was completely true. We had never done close air support. We didn't know who those guys on the ground were, but we just knew they were fighting, they needed help, and, followed their instructions. They knew where they needed the ordnance, and it was our job to put them there and on time.
That's got to be stressful, especially for the guys on the ground, because one mistake, their whole platoon could get blown up.
Like everybody,
yeah, no doubt.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy, man. I knew exactly where I was. I was working.
Yeah.
In 9/11. I was working construction and happened to see on the TV the second one. It seemed like a lot of people got to see the actual second one because it was already being televised, because so many people just had their eyes on it after the first one that, we were watching right when the second one hit. I'm like, dude, whoa. And we had a bunch of guys. We had a bunch of guys running around. They're like, we're under attack. They're like freaking out. I'm like, dude, we're in Utah. Okay. It's not here. It's not right here right now. Like, you don't have to freak out. We're going to try, dude. But that was my first job after high school.
So. I was in computer class in junior high.
That's what young buck there. The other day I was having lunch with a group of narcotics guys, and we're talking, sitting around the table, and and talking, and I realized that we're talking about age and everything, and I'm about 2 years the senior to everyone. And I was like, well, I was like, you know what they say is like, you know, be wary of an old man in a profession where guys die young. I was like, that guy's so I'm grizzly old guy around with a bunch of young bucks.
So that was your first deployment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And my only. When we came back from that, co-pilots were really heavy in co-pilots, so co-pilots were getting pulled off to fly UAVs, or they were getting sent to ALO, which is Air Liaison Officer. So you're on the ground calling in and strikes and with the ticks and the bugs, and or you could go and instruct. So, or I mean, I might have upgraded to aircraft commander, but I chose to go out to Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training and instruct European students out there.
Cool.
That's awesome. How many years did you stay in?
8.
8? Okay.
Yep.
And then how...
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, were you already married with at this point?
Jennifer and I got married. I always introduce her as my second wife because we had our wedding planned, and you know me, I kind of have a plan for my whole life. So I wasn't going to marry her until I was done with pilot training and I had my wings. So once I was an officer and I had my wings, then we could get married. And so, but in the meantime, while we're in pilot training, she couldn't get on base and things were super inconvenient for her. So about halfway through, we went to the Justice of the Peace with some of my classmates, and we got married. So we got married in pilot training and didn't tell anyone, and then we had our church wedding a little bit later. So I married her twice, so technically she is my...
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then you could say you're a polygamist. So you never divorced her either. So then you have, two wives. Okay, never mind.
That would be a lot of work. I don't even want to think about that. Sometimes she acts like she has a split personality and is. I'm married to 2 people, so you have to edit that out.
Oh, I'm sure she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. No, she is.
So what then, what was your career path like then after you got out of the Air Force? And so what were you doing right after that?
So after the Air Force, the brass ring for a lot of pilots is the airlines. Okay. So there, the advertisement is you're off half the month, you make, can make up to $250,000. You're flying the highest, gear, and you're not sweating anymore. And so I was the first one out of my pilot training class to get hired by a major airline.
That's awesome.
I went to Continental and was picked up by Continental Airlines, now United, and flying 737s. So
wow,
great equipment, super efficient on their training. Just awesome. But I did that for a little over a year, and I just didn't have any job satisfaction. First of all, I was away from the kids. I had Paisley and Pepper about that time, that I was away from them. But second of all, there was no greater good, from it. I was just getting flying from A to B. There was I wasn't contributing to society. I wasn't fighting for a cause. And everything. So I began applying to different federal agencies from there, and was picked up by a really good one, and have been with them for 12 years.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. It really does make a difference with how satisfied or fulfilled that you feel with a job.
Yes.
I mean, I know some people are fine with just clocking in, clocking out, never having to worry about it again, but I'm not. Like, I'm with you. There has to be a purpose. There has to be some way that I'm contributing and helping others, influencing others, something. Yeah. Or I just don't feel fulfilled,
They asked me during my interview process for this job, and then we brought it up again during that interview with them last 2 weeks ago, when they said, why would you leave flying, a $74 million bomber, to,